How Lightstorm first learned of Alita Battle Angel was through a friend of ours, Guillermo del Toro. And he brought to Jim's attention the anime first. And we fell in love with the story of the anime. At the heart of the world that Kashiro had created is this young, innocent girl who has to discover who she is in the story that he created in a world that was so unique. Oftentimes, animes or mangas are set in a very Asian specific world. Kashiro wrote the story actually to take place in a universal world where Iron City is a melting pot of all societies from around the world that come to gather there, speaking different languages. So he really opened the door for a cinematic translation of Iron City. It's an origin story of a young female protagonist who has no memory of who she is and who comes into this world thinking of herself as someone who is insignificant, and as a line says in the movie, and thrown out with the trash. And she comes to discover that inside of her is a hero. And that's a message for everybody that inside of them can also be a hero. It took Jim 5 years to get to a script that he was ready to make. At that same time, however, we looked at the landscape of technology and felt that we could maybe make a movie that Jim had conceived 10 years earlier, which was Avatar. And Jim now had a very tough decision, and it was a tough decision for him, which movie to do, Alita or Avatar. One of the reasons that Jim ultimately chose Avatar is because he thought that by doing Avatar first, the technology that we would learn on that film would benefit Alita in a greater fashion. In fact, having done Alita now, what we have learned is that doing Alita and what we've learned on that is going to have an even greater impact on the Avatar sequels. Jim Cameron is known for his strong female heroines. Alita falls exactly into that tradition. Jim's female heroines are not superheroes. They're real heroes. And that's what Alita is. And she becomes someone that people can identify with, but still aspire to be. And just like Ripley or Neytiri, Alita is that iconic of a character. Once we made Avatar and we realized that we were going to be making several sequels, we knew that Jim in the short term was not going to have a chance to direct Alita. So we started to touch base with certain directors that we were excited about. But we couldn't find the right person for a number of years that we would share the parenting of our child, Alita, until Jim had a social lunch with Robert Rodriguez. And at the end of that lunch, Robert said to Jim, if you're going to be doing Avatar for the foreseeable future, what happens to other projects like Alita? And a light bulb went off on Jim's head. I said, do you have 15 minutes? And Jim brought Robert back inside, and he showed him an art reel that we had created in 2005 for Alita. And Robert got so excited by what he saw. He knew a little bit about the property. He knew there was something Jim was going to do. And Jim said, here, I'm going to give you the script that I wrote that I'm happy with. It was way too long. It was 186 pages. And Jim said, if you could bring it down to a shooting length, you can direct it. On top of that, Jim gave Robert over 600 pages of notes for the story. Robert looked at the work and looked at Jim in the eye and said, I'm not going to rewrite you because you don't rewrite Jim Cameron. I'm going to edit you. And Robert went away with no deal in place, on spec. And he worked on the script, and he edited the script down to a manageable length. And when we got it back, and Jim and I both read the script, we were both shocked that we weren't missing anything from the longer script. We knew things had been taken out, but the core important themes, the character moments, were all there. And that told us that Robert was the right person to parent this child with. Alita is a cyborg. Cyborgs are not robots. Cyborgs are augmented humans. And Alita's journey is really discovering what does it mean to be human. And being human is having a heart and caring. Caring about someone as a parent, caring about someone as a lover. It's about caring about the world you're in. And Alita discovers that. And that is such a universal message. There were 5 great sky cities around the equator on the Earth. Cities that floated in the sky, connected by a space elevator up to them. During the war, 4 of those cities fell, and only one remained, the one above Iron City. Masses of population from around the rest of the world at the end of the war came and gathered under Iron City, in its shadow. Iron City existed in a lap of luxury above the city below that was squandering for their survival. And it would take and pillage things from below. Workers down below had to provide Iron City with all of their goods. And all Iron City would do in return is dump its garbage on Iron City. But Iron City is a place where many of the humans have accepted their existence and still find joy without all the necessities that we might have in the 20th century. They find joy in each other. They find joy in the sports that they play. So it's not a life where you have a post-apocalyptic world. That happened centuries before our movie opens. This is a world that exists today on our planet Earth and is relatable to people as we go through our story. The city above Iron City is Zalem. It is always forever out of the reach of the people in the lower world. It's the promised land to them. They aspire to get there, and people are often filled with false dreams of being able to get there, when in fact they can't. In our world, the only way for someone to truly get to Zalem is to win the Motorball Championship and be invited there by the Zalemites to go up there. The unique thing about how we're portraying Iron City is, while for many people living in a Western world, it might look like an impoverished city, we see the city through Alita's eyes as she goes through this world for the first time. And she only sees joy and wonder in this world. And it is a great metaphor and a learning lesson for us about what are those things that are important in a world. And by being able to go through Iron City and to see fruit stands on the street and taxi cabs going by and kids playing on the street, it makes it relatable for anybody in today's world, no matter in what country they live, no matter in what city they live. Alita is found in the scrapyard of Iron City, dropped as part of the garbage from Zalem above. And she's discovered by a cyber doctor named Ito. Ito sees her core, just a torso of a young 13-year-old or so girl in this scrap heap. And he goes over to her, and he's amazed to find out that she's alive. And he brings her back to his workshop. And he goes down into his basement, and he brings up a beautiful porcelain-like body that he's going to attach the cybercore to. It's a body that he had once built for his 12-year-old paraplegic daughter, but never got a chance to complete it in time before she tragically died. So the story becomes really Ito's second chance at fatherhood and Alita's journey of self-discovery. Alita comes into this world with no memory of who she is. One of the driving forces through her story is trying to discover her past and where did she come from. And as it turns out, only certain situations can spark those memories for her. And she doesn't know quite what those are, so she continues to try and seek out things that will let her know more of her past. If anybody asks me, about the timing of making Alita, it's not the technology that was so important. It was finding Rosa Salazar to play the character of Alita, because neither Jim nor I could imagine anyone else today playing that role. Rosa came in and auditioned for Robert in a private audition with him, and Robert shared the audition tape with us. And he said to us that Rosa actually made him cry in the room. And Jim and I saw her tape, and we thought, she's it. But we also knew we had the responsibility to continue to explore. And we did for several months. And ultimately, we set up an old-fashioned screen test with Rosa and 2 other actresses. And we spent a whole day shooting their scenes, separately, of course. And when we just watched the footage back on the big screen, there was no question of who was born to play Alita other than Rosa Salazar. The biggest challenge of this film, from a design standpoint, was the character of Alita herself. We wanted to hold true as much as we could to the manga character that Kishiro had created. We went through a very lengthy design process of the character without knowing who the actress was who was going to be playing her. And that enabled us to get into great detail on her initial body, what I refer to as the doll body, with the porcelain inlays and all the detail that Ito spent in preparing the body for his daughter, to the berserker body and its futuristic style that Alita ultimately adopts into. But it wasn't really until we cast Rosa that we could finalize the most important element of the design, the face. We had learned from Avatar the importance of incorporating the design of the actor playing the character into the design of the character if we wanted all the emotion to come through. So we used Rosa's face as inspiration to ultimately evolve Alita's face into. We would do a complete scan of Rosa's head. We would build Alita's head in 3D. We would mold and model that